What's the big lead in fantasy sports tonight? You're listening to Big Lead Sports on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio.
That's right, it's Big Lead Sports on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, Sirius 210 XM 87. If you want to get into the program, 888-XM Fantasy, 888-963-2682. And remember, the holidays with Sirius, here we go. We want to wish all of our friends, a happy new year, and welcome to Sirius. If you're a new subscriber, recently got Sirius XM as a gift. Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio is the nation's first and only radio channel exclusively dedicated to fantasy sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Listen every day on Sirius Channel 210, XM Channel 87, live online at SiriusXM.com and on your smartphone with the Sirius XM app. We've got Chris Anthony from Fantasyomatic hanging out with us. He's Ryan Benini. I'm Steve Kyler, and we've been talking about some of the divisional playoff matchups. And, when we left, Chris, we were talking a little bit about Denver and New England, which then brings us to the Sunday games. And I know there's a game on the Sunday schedule you care a little bit about more than the others. But let's get Houston and Baltimore out of the way. I just don't think TJ Yates can win a game against the Baltimore Ravens. But I'm not thrilled with how Joe Flacco's been playing lately for the Baltimore Ravens. The fact that this is a home game for Baltimore gives me a little more faith. But how do you read this game? What are you looking forward to on Sunday?
Well, it boils down to defenses for me. They're two great defenses. But when you look at the Ravens, they're top 5 against quarterbacks and top 6 against the wide receivers. I think they're going to be able to really force Yates to do something. I thought that was going to be the same case for Yates last weekend, and Arian Foster really showed up. And here's an interesting point: is even from a fantasy perspective, the Ravens are in the last month have actually been a top 10 easy matchup for opposing fantasy running backs. So that means that I think that Foster's going to be able to get some room and make some things happen, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to. There's going to be a guy on the other side of the line that's doing the same thing in Ray Rice. I think that Ray Rice is going to win that battle, and then it boils down to the Flacco versus Yates, and I think it's a marginal difference, but it favors Flacco.
The one thing about that, though, is you're talking about two elite defenses, and I think both of them really are going to be able to do to each other what they don't want them to do to each other. You know, when you look at the physicality that the Houston Texans and how they can get at Joe Flacco and bother Joe, and with TJ Yates, you're talking about a defense from Baltimore that can play the run. They play it well, but again, they're a physical, intimidating defense. I don't think either one of these teams wants to see their quarterback rattled early and often, and that's exactly what both of these defenses do. I think it's going to be a defensive slugfest. I don't see a lot of points in this game.
Well, my biggest fear with Baltimore is which offense is going to show up. They've been Jekyll and Hyde all season long. I love Joe Flacco. I think he can lead this team to a Super Bowl at some point. But we've seen this team almost completely look beyond their opponents several times this year, not be focused. I still don't think they really know what their identity is. Are we a running game? Are we a passing team? What's Anquan Bolden's health going to be coming back into the lineup this weekend? There's so many variables here. It just worries me internally. On paper, Baltimore should win this game hands down. But where are they going to be mentally? I haven't seen that mental toughness out of them yet this season. And Chris, I want to broach you with the subject of these 4 games this weekend, which is the biggest trap team that you see completely playing out?
Denver Broncos.
Yeah, well, how can you not say Denver Broncos? There's from a fantasy standpoint, they've got everything pointing in their direction, right? So we're talking fantasy there, but when we're talking NFL, the door is open. If that defense can produce, if they can keep that game tight, we've seen some amazing things happen on the offense. If that running game can get going, I think they can make this a different game than the last time they saw each other back in week 13. So that is, I think, the definition of a trap game right there.
Here's the interesting thing, and I want your guys' thoughts on this. And I think I've kind of narrowed it down why Denver makes everyone do what Chris just did, which is go Denver. They are so uncharacteristic for what they do and how they do it. It's almost the unexpected. You expect Tim Tebow to throw the ball at somebody's feet, but you don't expect for him to make the play that he made to Demaryius Thomas. And when he does, it's almost like, ha, but yeah. And I think that's where I'm at with Denver is every time you count the Denver defense out, they make a great play. Every time you count Tim Tebow out, he makes a great play. They are just the underdog team in almost every way. But when they do it, you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, I knew they could do it. It's like it's not like it's improbable, like they can't get it done. It's improbable because maybe you don't want them to get it done, and they do.
The consistency of Tebow is the problem, though. What was it? Late in the fourth quarter, 3rd and 9, he had Daniel Fells, I believe it was, wide open, and it hits him in the feet. And then in the overtime play, I put as much of this on Pittsburgh's defense as I do Tebow and Demaryius Thomas completing an actual pass, because you'd like to think a quarterback and a wide receiver at the NFL level could complete a wide open pass most of the time. Pittsburgh was completely playing the run in that. I was happy Denver finally got away on first down from let's run into the brick wall and see what happens. They came out with the mentality we're going to pass. Pittsburgh completely figured at that point they were going to run the football. They had, I believe it was 9 or 10 guys in the box. That's why Demaryius was so wide open. That play, one of Tebow's typical 50% shots, he actually hit. So I just can't see them getting past New England, and I can't see them getting in a shootout with New England in the reality that they can keep up with what Tom Brady can do.
But let me ask you this question, though, Ryan, to qualify that. If Denver wins, can you say, yeah, they were capable of winning? There are some matchups that you see and you go, there's just no chance. It's David against Goliath. There is a juggernaut here. You're not getting past. You look at these matchups, and that really is probably the closest is Denver, New England. But even New England with all of its flaws, you could say, and Chris, back me up on this, there's a scenario in which Denver can win this game.
There's no question a scenario where Denver can win this game, and I think the fact that the game plan that you saw Pittsburgh's defense roll out happened last week, and that's on film. That's going to actually benefit New England because before that game, anybody would have played the same way that Pittsburgh did. Not only were they putting 10 guys in the box, they're bringing safeties in on blitzes or bringing safeties in on expected run plays, and that's exactly how that 80-yard bomb happened in the first place, just like you guys mentioned. But now New England's seen that. Now New England knows, even with their patchwork practice squad secondary, that they need to watch out for the pass, and they're going to bring a more balanced defense this weekend. So I think the door of the trap closes a little bit because of what's on film from last week. It doesn't benefit Pittsburgh to kind of get their nose bloodied by that one, but certainly the door is definitely open for this craziness that we see. But again, the consistency is the issue. There's absolutely, to just kind of summarize, there's just as much of a reason for this game to be 42-0 in favor of the Patriots as it is to be a close game that's won by the Broncos. There's nothing going in either direction on this one.
And that's what I'm talking about is you go Denver, but yeah, okay, maybe they can win.
Come on, guys. I'm going to have to start getting urine tests around here. Seriously. Look at it last week. I picked Denver to win last week. I got one wrong last week. Damn Atlanta. Anyway, the reality is Pittsburgh was set up to fail last week. Big Ben was less than 100%. Pouncey was out. Clark didn't play in the game. They lost several players during the course of the game. This New England team as a whole, regardless of how bad the defense has been all year, now they have 2 weeks to get healthy, having the first week bye. This is Tom Brady in the playoffs. This is a New England offense that has been a juggernaut most of the season. We saw, week 16, week 17, Buffalo came out and put up 21 quick points. Brady just kind of laughs and says, okay, time to go to business. 45 points or 50 points, whatever it was later, they're done. I don't think Buffalo scored again. Denver has to play a perfect game. Tim Tebow has to play a perfect game. Tom Brady has to be off of his game. You need such a perfect storm to develop for New England to lose this game in New England. I just don't think it's realistic. And I'd love what Tim Tebow did, but the reality is Denver didn't deserve to be in the playoffs. This is a team that couldn't even win in week 17, knowing that win and we're in. This is a bad team that got incredibly lucky against an opponent last week that was beat up and could not do what they needed to do.
Now, the one thing I want to put on top of that, after the whole soapbox thing, and if you want to play with my urine, you're welcome to. Here's the point. When Tom Brady gets rattled when a defense gets at Tom Brady, what happens with Tom Brady?
He throws an 80-yard touchdown to Wes Walker on the next play.
No, Tom Brady collapses, and so do the New England Patriots. What's the one thing we saw happen with the Pittsburgh Steelers? As good as that Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line can be, Broncos got in there. If the Broncos can get at Tom Brady, I think this is a football game. I don't think this is a landslide walk. And I'm the first person that wants to see Tim Tebow fail. I really do. Because I'm really thinking about moving to another country where they don't watch football if Tim Tebow wins this week.
You're not going to be able to turn on any media for weeks.
So, yeah, no, I've told my wife about this, the whole Tim Tebow thing, because she's not following it. And every time we get in the car and sports radio comes on, someone somewhere is talking about Tim Tebow. And it's just, I'm getting sick of it. But the truth of the matter is again, I don't think the Denver Broncos win because of Tim Tebow. I think they win because they can get at Tom Brady, and as good as the New England offense can be, when Tom Brady has to move around and be creative, he's not very good. And I think that's the one thing the Denver Broncos bring to the table on this. Now, Chris, we're going to be up against a break here real quick, and I want to get your thoughts on your team, and then Ryan and I'll kick around the Tom Brady Denver Bronco thing. But your voice, the Green Bay Packers, if you would call it the worst draw of the bunch, they get the New York Giants, the one team that could probably beat them in Lambeau Field. How do you look at the New York Giants in the Green Bay game, and do you think your Green Bay Packers can pull it out? On and off the record.
Okay. Well, it's I actually saw this game played in New York back in Week 13. It was a very exciting one, and a lot of people are looking at that as sort of the blueprint of what's going to happen this weekend. But there's been some huge shifts. Obviously, New York has rediscovered their defense and found the running game. Back when they played that game in New York, Osi wasn't in that game. They only managed 2 sacks on Aaron Rodgers. And, they obviously didn't have Mario Manningham, David Bass on the offensive line, even some depth in Sean Andrews. So there's a lot of things missing from the Giants team back then, and obviously they've got all this emotion going into it. But at the same time, the Packers have the health. They're healthier than they have been since training camp, actually, coming into this game. They finally got Chad Clifton back, which for Packer fans is huge. They got Brian Bulaga back. He's going to be bookended on the other side. That means everybody goes back to their normal position. They actually have some depth there as well. Josh Sitton and Chad Clifton weren't playing in the game in New York, and they somehow only gave up the 2 sacks. And actually, James Starks is probably the only guy that's a question mark now. Greg Jennings is going to be back. The wild card on both sides of the ball comes with defense as far as I'm concerned. Watch out for a guy named Brad Jones who got about 30 snaps against the Lions, and he's the linebacker there, and he's looking for his job back, and I think he's a guy that can actually put some pressure on the run game for Green Bay. And on the other side of the ball, obviously you got to watch for whether or not Aaron Ross is going to be going. He's expected to be available. He passed all his concussion tests. If he's not playing, then the Prince is going to be in there against Aaron Rodgers and all his weapons. That's a totally different ball game if it's Prince versus Ross. So I think those are the 2 wild card guys there. And so on and off the record, I'm not a betting man, but I would take the Giants because of the 8.5 points. But I still like the Packers' chances to pull this thing out with the little bit of Lambeau mystique this weekend.
There you go. He is Chris Anthony from Fantasyomatic.com. Chris, it was good to get you back into the program. If Green Bay wins, you're back in next week. If the Giants win, we'll send you some beer.
Fair enough.
All right, Chris. Thanks so much, my friend. We'll catch up with you down the road.
You bet.
He's Chris Anthony from